Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Media Monday on the IBM TV network. I'm here with Bill Denko, who's the author of co-author of Richard and the Millionaire, co-author of The Millionaire Next Door, and Mark Themig, who is the CEO of Esports Network. And today we have a very interesting topic, and it deals with legacy media versus social media versus Trump media, because Trump, as we well know, is trying to create his own media program. Legacy media has been around for a long time, and there's this big fight in Congress dealing with Instagram, where they're saying, well, Instagram is bad for people. And the thing is, we need to regulate Instagram because for some reason, I guess people can't hit the delete button. So I'm wondering if all this bad media revolving around social media isn't being generated by legacy media is basically an attack on social media. In other words, they just don't like social media. So Mark, I'm going to start with you because you run the Esports Network and you broadcast mainly through traditional media or social media. Tell us a little bit about how your network works, and then we'll go on from there.
Well, thanks. Appreciate the opportunity. So Esports, ESPORTZ Network, we are a news and entertainment programming offering. We are also Reuters worldwide partner for esports news. We have about 90 reporters around the world that work with us on a freelance basis that help us report the news that's interesting to people in the gaming and esports area. We, of course, use a variety of media capabilities to communicate. We certainly operate multiple websites where our content can be found, esports with a Z.com, Esports Network, that is. And then we also work with the full range of social media channels. So we have Facebook, we have YouTube, we have Instagram, we have TikTok, we have Twitter. We both discover stories on social media as well as distribute stories on social media. Twitter happens to be a very dynamic communication tool for gamers. So a lot of information that comes out of sort of breaking news, so to speak, will oftentimes be shared on Twitter by someone who is at the forefront of wherever that's happening. And then our reporters can pick up on that story, get deeper into it, and actually write, produce, and we upload those stories through a variety of means. We also upload through channels like Medium and other major news organizations as well. But social media is a very important tool for both communicating what we're doing, but also learning about what's going on on a real-time level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bill, I know you used to teach marketing at State University of New York and Albany. What are we looking at today when it comes to marketing? I mean, I'm seeing there's legacy media right now. We have social media, which probably did not exist when you were teaching your marketing course. And then you have a new media. Trump is coming in with his own media programming. Where's this going? What do you see? Where do you see the media going?
Well, I remember about 40 years ago when the internet was becoming a real tool. There was discussions within the School of Business. Maybe we ought to create courses, marketing in the age of the internet. And then it quickly said, well, how about marketing in the age of the TV? And how about marketing in the age of the newspaper? I mean, there's always going to be some sort of evolution that we're going to have to contend with. One of my real concerns is the quality of the information that is being disseminated, be it from a legacy outlet or something new. If I could just give one quick example, because I know this has come up in a previous program about challenging when President Trump said, well, to use Clorox. Okay, that got a lot of misinformation. And I say this not as a medical doctor, but as a PhD and somebody who knows something about the healthcare of people, like, well, my own brother. I know for a fact there are things such as a pulmonary lavage, where you actually bathe your lungs with a saline solution or some sort of appropriate medical solution. And there's also something called arenacetin for a bladder cleansing that sterilizes. I mean, so there are some really harsh chemicals or unusual chemicals. Who would think about putting a liquid into the lungs, or who would think about putting a disinfectant, which is what it is, that kills viruses and bacteria within the bladder? Well, my point is simply this: when Trump said, "How about Clorox?" Well, look, it deserves at least some investigation, and it's not such a far-fetched idea. But when I talk to some people who are pretty knowledgeable, they say, "Oh, how irresponsible for Trump to say such a thing." Well, but the reality is there might be something to it. And I just don't like the idea that these rumors, or you can squash ideas just by, having a preponderance of naysayers saying, "Oh no, this is ridiculous." We really need some sort of legitimate vetting of ideas, and especially from the medical community, not from those who just happen to have an opinion and happen to have a broadcast microphone available to them.
Yeah, and what you said is very interesting, because remember on the January 6th deal, we went in and specifically went and did research exactly what did he said. And what he said exactly: "I want you to peacefully march down the street and tell Congress, that you wanted some change." He used the word peacefully, Bill.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, specifically in there. It was changed, distorted, contorted by the media. So we had a whole special on IBM TV with the Lawyer's Den to ferry out the facts, because that's what you do as lawyers. You want to know what the facts really are. And all the attorneys, and we represent both sides of the aisle, agreed that it was not being reported properly. In other words, they weren't saying what he exactly said. And unfortunately, I have seen this on media for now years. In other words, I'm not getting news anymore. I'm getting agendas. In other words, it's agenda driven. And then there was a book I just bought. I was going to show my friend David Johnson. It was from Breitbart, whatever the heck they are. And they did their investigative reporting on CNN. Half the people that are on TV are married to people that are high up in the Democratic Party. And I'm going like, come on. I mean, in my industry, it'd be called conflict of interest, self-dealing. It wouldn't be allowed, but it's allowed in media. In other words, it seems to me in media, we get a free pass that you can have whatever agenda you want and go ahead with it. Is that what we're looking to right now, Bill?
Yeah. So anybody who has the microphone and the printing press, you know how the story works. I was talking to one of my local politicians about a controversy that was in the newspaper. And he says, "Man, I really got to straighten out the editorial board." And I advised him, never pick a fight with somebody who buys ink by the barrel. The old adage. It's you can't win.
Right.
He has to make a rational argument, not in that paper, but by his own actions, I suppose.
Yeah.
And hopefully will be truthfully reported.
Right.
Nick and Bill, what I've seen as well, having been around a long time too, is that reporters are not necessarily reporters. Reporters are commentators, which is what Bill, I think Nick, you were referring to. So CNN are the commentators, and they spin the news, and they're reporters that actually investigate and report on the facts.
Right.
So we run a fact-based news organization with, obviously esports and gaming is, not as quote controversial unless you get into stories like covering Blizzard's scandals and union issues and things of that nature. Then of course it can take on a particular angle. But by and large, we're watching what we used to call a news organization, for example, CNN, which is really not a news organization. It's not the news organization we knew 10, 15 years ago.
Correct. Right.
And that has changed a lot. And in terms of social media with respect to marketing, because I also own a marketing and PR firm called the Ignite Agency, and we do a lot of crowdfunding work, both non-equity, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and we do equity work with raising millions of dollars through Reg CF, Reg A, and so on. Social media is an important part of running a funding campaign, because you're trying to get the attention of people to click and go there and see what your offering is. However, one of the challenges is it's not inexpensive to do it, because even if you have a large following, let's say you have 25, 30, 40,000 followers or more, when you post, unless you put money behind that post, only a very small segment of your audience that you're connected to is going to see what you posted. And the challenge for many early stage businesses and smaller businesses is they're looking for outsized results with undersized budgets. And that is where a problem lies, where there's a lot of wasted spending. And of course, there's a lot of bots. And and the bots are going to give you the clicks and burn your expenditure. And that's another issue in social media that we didn't talk about yet, but it's an important issue, because if you're trying to use social media as a marketing tool, you will be substantially diluted depending on what you're doing and what you spend and how you approach it and so on.
Yeah, because the bots are the ones that are
Nick.
Yeah. I was get to Mark, because I also want to get updated with the presidential poll.
I'll find out about the presidential poll, and we can tell our friends about the presidential polls as well, and we can definitely talk about the politics of the poll and the kind of results that it has gotten and everything.
You'll love
but
this.
one of the questions I was going to ask really quickly is, I know we talk about the skewed politics of the media and the way that the media is portrayed and everything of that nature, but is it really anything new? Because as both of y'all were talking, I was hearing what you said, Bill, about the quotes and everything along those lines, and I do understand what you're saying, that I wish that more people had put it in the context of what was said, even with the bleach comment and everything, when, like I said, whether he meant that in the way that people reported it or not, that's up to people's interpretation of his own agenda and his own politics and his own belief system and everything. But that being said, and I do wish that more reporters did at least put the context like you did, Bill. But that being said, is it anything new? Because I'm thinking about this old form of journalism that used to exist way before newspapers. And in a lot of ways, it's what gave people, the common man, the voice, because everybody knew that they could get access to a very basic piece of equipment, just like they can get access to a very basic thing called the internet right now. And that's if we look at the 1920s, or we go all the way back to the Revolutionary Age, and we look at a thing called the newsletter, because everybody could get a copy of a mimeograph, and therefore they could roll off whatever their agenda was. And that's why a lot of unions and a lot of activists in one form or another would use the newsletter to put out their agenda. So it seems to me that what we're seeing is a new version of the newsletter, but using the internet as that variation. Because like when I go on Clubhouse or when I go on a number of other platforms, they're doing the same thing that historically newsletters did, whether that was the 1920s. And ironically, it was people that were, if they were mad at the liberal bias of the media now, they were mad at what they considered the conservative bias in like the 1920s when yellow journalism and everything was out there. So that's when a lot of people went to the mimeographs, or they were mad at America becoming an independent nation, which is why it became very much of a popular variation in the Revolutionary time. I'm thinking about Frederick Douglass and Ben Franklin had newsletters of one form or fashion or another. So just wondering, aren't we in the middle of a new variation in the sense that we can just put out our news in a very effective way, just the way you could with the newsletter when we had the mimeograph or the copier? You went and ran off a couple of copies, and to, I can't remember whether it was Bill or Mark's point, you hope that you at least got to your target market, but you also hope to get to a broader market as well. So it seems to me that even though we're putting it in a modern day complex or modern day variation, it's nothing new.
But I'm really concerned on how some what I consider educated people. For example, this one woman I know who has a master's degree in civil engineering, she has a good science background. She casually said how irresponsible Trump was for making that bleach remark. And I said, wait a minute. She just gets her news from some, I don't know where she gets her news, but she never thought to look into, well, is there such a thing as an internal use of some of these chemicals? And I would think her of all people would, she of all people would do this. But so I'm really concerned. So, I'm looking at an educated woman who just dismisses the validity of a remark just because she doesn't like the president. I know she doesn't like Trump, but that's besides the point. He still was making a remark that should have been vetted in a more serious way.
No, I would agree with that and everything. I'd love to hear what Mark's thoughts are.
Yeah,
I was going to get to the poll results as well. Since you had
I did.
Hey, let's jump in there, Mark. Get the poll results.
Well, the thing is, here's something pretty exciting. First of all, our broadcast has been accepted by Al Jazeera, so we rebroadcast now on Al Jazeera and the BBC. And I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know what your relationship or you have any with Mark with Al Jazeera, or to even think about them at all. I don't want to say anything bad about it because they are accepting our content now, but at the same time, I don't really know much about them except they're headquartered in Qatar, and then that's about it. That's knowledge about it.
They're certainly an important media news organization in the Middle East. Yeah. Particularly in the UAE, they have their own slant on things, as each and every network does. But they are well respected in the Middle East and watched. News is a big thing. I lived in Kuwait for a few years, and I can tell you that a lot of people watch news, and they tend to watch news of other countries, and particularly watch news that covers both their region but the U.S. I think the interesting thing, when I lived abroad, and I lived in Moscow for a few years as well, people oftentimes in those countries know more about what's going on in our country than the people who live here, because they pay a lot of attention to it and find it fascinating and interesting and follow it. So our media channels have a huge impact on the perception of this country and what we do and how we live around the world, much more so than I think many of us realize unless you have lived abroad.
Right. I totally agree with you. When I was in Italy, I found out that one thing that people like to watch is American programming, and sometimes it was really difficult to get. So I watched our channel because I could actually get a lot of channels. I could watch English-speaking channel here because I couldn't watch some of the other ones because they were in Italian. It was very difficult to get English-speaking news. But we are playing with something very interesting because we're beaming in through LinkedIn now. So this show goes through LinkedIn.
Yeah, but I was going to talk about.
So now we're going to talk about this poll that Mark.
The poll that I had and everything. Yeah, but it was an amazing poll.
All about the poll.
Just really quickly, just a side, but I will get to the poll, I promise. Full Frame, which is a major documentary film festival, actually showed a movie about Al Jazeera, and you want to know what kind of impact it had. It was actually one of the more watched films that I remember when they did that film in 2018. So it wasn't that long ago. They showed it at the festival 3 years ago, and that network, at least at that time, was broadcasting to 40 million Arab viewers. So that I'll tell you what kind of numbers they've got and everything, because they actually followed the journalists from that network as they were talking about free debate and facing the controversies of the war there in Iraq and in the Middle East. So that's just a quick aside, because I do remember watching that movie. So I was actually curious as to when it came out and everything. But as for the poll, I asked on LinkedIn, and one thing I got to make clear is that LinkedIn and the way that their polls work, you have limitations. So you can't put everybody on there. Like I would have liked to put in several other options and everything, but I basically can only get up to 4 options. So I picked 4 people I think I had 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and I just threw it out there as which of these, notice I said which of these, meaning not all, these are not your only options, but which of these do you consider the worst president? And the options I gave them were Trump, Carter, Buchanan, because I wanted to get a historical figure, and Nixon. Ironically, Carter won. Carter won with 44%, and Trump came in second, even though at the beginning of the poll, he was leading, but then he fell behind to Carter. Nixon came in third with 13%. By the way, Carter had 44%, Trump had 36%, and Buchanan, because nobody knows who the heck Buchanan is, came at a very low 7%. And I got a lot of people that were asking about other people that I should have put in there, including our current president. If I was to put his name in there, he probably would finish either first or second behind or around Trump and Carter. Because I got a whole lot of people that asked, why didn't you put Biden in the list? And then they also brought up some other interesting presidents like Woodrow Wilson, Frederick Delano Roosevelt, LBJ, and definitely some others that they wanted in there, including Obama and Clinton, and a number of others that they wanted as well. Had not even really thought about Woodrow Wilson. Oh, and I think they also had Andrew Johnson in there as one that they wanted to be seen as well. Had not really thought about Woodrow Wilson, but then one of the people wrote me back and brought up some very interesting points, which I think Bill Danko will find interesting, because they brought up that Woodrow Wilson is who gave us a lot of the financial things that we don't like the IRS and the Federal Reserve and a number of other things. And they also mentioned, or at least Sasha did, that he's the one that was very much involved in bringing us into the war. And there were some other things that put him very high on the list. So there was a number of people that were going for Woodrow Wilson, and that actually surprised me.
Mark, you put the poll in yesterday. What's your view count today?
I'm going to tell you that right now. Yeah. As of right now, that with those votes that I was talking about, I put it in yesterday, and it's less than 48 hours because it was actually late night that I did it. We is 4,795 votes. The view count as of right now is 159,907 views. That's how many.
Yeah, see, Mark shaking his head, and I agree.
And 901 comments.
How many comments?
901 comments.
901 comments. I mean, see, to me, Mark, this went off like a rocket, because if anybody does marketing, you just don't go from 0 to 100. Is it 156,000 or 159,000?
159,907, almost 100.
Right. And this is less than 24 hours. So the thing is, here was my response to that. We're going to put together a special TV show on the worst presidents ever and the best presidents ever. So there are going to be 2 shows. And what day are we going to do it? February 21st, because that's President's Day. Mm-hmm. Okay. So my thinking is, I don't know if you do this on esports, is to build the programming around the demand rather than try to say, okay, this is the program and here it is. You're going to eat it. Okay. Instead, find out what the demand is first, then build the program around it. I don't know. What are your thoughts about that, Mark? That type of approach?
You know, it's a great point, and it's a brilliant poll that you guys put together. I think it's really smart, and no polls are ever perfect, but they're indicative, and I think it's indicative of a lot of things. That first of all, it's indicative that there's a tremendous amount of attention paid to politics today.
Yeah.
And I have spoken to a couple of social media people that started not too long ago and have really politically oriented social media, and they get a tremendous amount of views and activity, much more so than traditional types of things. So we are in a very polarized and very dynamic political environment today, being fueled in large part. You talk about the traditional media, but being fueled in large part by traditional media that is taking its own slant channel by channel, and that's fueling a tremendous amount of social media activity, because that's the only way that people have at this point to really react to what they're watching on CNN or MSNBC or Fox or any of those. They watch something and then they go out and drive a whole dialogue on it. And so I think that continuing to look at polls that sample sentiment in these critical areas. And I'm sure if you do one on COVID, you're going to get an equal kind of response. Tremendous polarization on feelings about it. So I think polls are a great way, Nick, as you just pointed out, to figure out what should we be talking about, what can we talk about that'll be interesting to people, what's getting traction. And right now, political issues across the spectrum and globally. I mean.
Hey,
really,
along those same lines, Mark, and I was just curious your thoughts, but I did think about putting this as a poll. I may have done it some time back, but I did not do it recently. There is an issue. Well, actually, there's a couple of issues. We can even go with the kneeling and everything, but there's a more present issue, and you alluded to it earlier today on your Economics Monday show, Nick, and everything, that I would be curious to see people's results on as polling results go, and that is cryptocurrency, because we are actually seeing people, even those in the sports world, that are willing to accept cryptocurrency as their method of payment. I know that there's an entire country, Ecuador, I believe it is, that has said that it will recognize cryptocurrency as one of its means of money. And that's right, it's El Salvador, I believe, as one of its means of money and everything. And there are athletes that have also said that they will take either the majority of their pay or all of their pay in cryptocurrency. So, Mark, I would think that would also be a poll that a lot of folks would find interesting. If you ask them, would you be willing to accept your pay in cryptocurrency versus the regular dollars and cents and checks that we are used to and everything? Because like I said, when you get a major athlete, and I think it's like at least a couple of NFL players and some baseball players that have said, hey, give me my check in cryptocurrency, and I have no problem with that. I can't remember if they said the entirety or the majority, but I was just surprised when I heard that.
Yeah, I would tell you, Mark, and that's a great point. Gaming and gamers have been way ahead of the curve on this whole fintech integration into the platforms that we operate for gaming and playing games and so on. They've been taking cryptocurrency for a couple of years now. And it is a oftentimes desired form in betting, in the betting area as well, which is a very growing area across the world. And obviously, it's an opportunity for in the U.S. Many states have approved it, but haven't established the regulations. But now, with pressure to raise taxes for various items, we're going to see more approvals. But we're going to see that trading occur through electronic currency, which is crypto. There are leaders in the crypto area. I saw Bitcoin got back up to 50,000 again. And so there's real concern when you have inflation as well, that makes cryptocurrencies a much more attractive and interesting and dynamic subject. So you're right on the money there. There are going to be more and more developments in that whole area because of its whole approach, and its and because of inflation, I think is going to drive an acceleration in this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes,
we've been joined by David Johnson and Bill Denko. Also, next week we're actually have another author on, Jerry Borman, who's an award-winning author who I've known for years because I read a lot of his books. So he's going to be on next week also to join us also as well. But Mark did something very interesting, David. He put a poll last night on who's the worst president. He did a worst president poll on LinkedIn. Now, we beam this show now through LinkedIn, which we didn't do before, but now they do. But that wasn't the thing that interested me. Within less than 24 hours, he had 159,000 views and 3,000. I mean, yeah, okay. Anybody knows anything about media? What? 159,000 views, and like a matter of hours. What is it with this? And so here's my thoughts, David. Okay. My thoughts is to create a whole television show based on the poll, the worst president ever. And so we're going to do a whole television show on the worst president ever. And then we're going to do another show on the best president ever, the GOAT, the greatest of all time president. And we'll do it on February 21st, which is President's Day. No one ever does anything like that.
Yeah, we never do anything like that.
And I think it'll be a hit because he got 150 some thousand people in a couple hours.
Well,
On that.
it's
So,
been less than 36. Before David gets to his answer, I have
Sure.
now joined the ranks of something that you have, David, because I was checking the results as we've been going. I'm still getting remarks right now and everything. And I know that you said that in your book, because you get to put it as a quote, what Trump said about you and everything. If I ever write a book, I am now going to quote Mr. Jonathan Steve Bass.
There it
I
is.
have no idea who
Gee.
this guy is because his latest answer is because the author is a liberal freak. That is his latest thing about me and everything.
Oh,
So
wait. Who's the liberal freak? Is that David?
One of the
that
people.
would be
okay.
me because
I
I
thought
wrote
he was the
poll.
weird dude.
Mark.
Yeah.
Well, there have been shows like this. History Channel, among others, have done rating the presidents, and that tells you it works. I mean, if you want to write a book about something no one's ever written about, you probably don't have an audience for it. There's a joke in the publishing business that based on sales of other books, the best-selling book of all time should be called Abraham Lincoln's Doctor's Dog. But I think that's a perfectly good idea. Are we going to talk about all 46 presidents or just modern presidents?
Well, no, one of the things, and that's what I said that at the beginning, that there are limitations, and David Grayson, who also joined us, will love this. There are limitations the way that the poll is done, because unfortunately, LinkedIn only gives you 4 options. So I had 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats, and I did have Trump on there. I did have Carter on there. I did not have Obama or Biden on there, which a lot of people got frustrated with me about. I also didn't have Woodrow Wilson on the list as well, and definitely Nixon was on there. And I did pick one that was historical because I had a conversation and somebody had asked me about Buchanan. So Buchanan was my historical figure. I could have
That's
used
probably me on the show, 'cause I've
some other
cited
historical
Buchanan.
ones as well, because they only give you 4 options. So those were the 4 options that people gave, and I've been getting a lot of different answers and everything. I saw David joined us as well. David, this has become such a popular topic. I'm just going to tell you how popular it is, and Nick will love this as well. I was part of, I think I mentioned this on the show before, I am a member of the Triangle Association of Black Journalists. It's a local division of the National Association of Black Journalists as well. We actually did a panel discussion on this past week. It was like a discussion that was done through Zoom and some of the other platforms. I think it went on to Facebook. I need to see if I can get copies of what was said, because we had an expert from the medical field, we had an expert from the election field, and we had a lot of, well, not a lot, but we had some journalists representing TV, newspaper, and other mediums. And the reason I said that you would find it interesting, David, is because the topic of the workshop was how to spot fake news. That was the topic of the workshop, and we did it on Saturday.
Well, the National Association of Black Journalists always makes the National Association of Hispanic Journalists look terrible. You guys are much more organized. Your online platform is great. Big tent politics. I have a login to the National Association of Black Journalists for Jobs. They pump out. We have a conference every 3 or 4 years.
Every 3 or 4 years.
Yeah,
The
we do
joint
a
conference.
yeah, and those are the most fun ones, just so that you're aware. Regarding this LinkedIn polling, so I have a LinkedIn. That's how I found Nick here. That's how we became friends, and I got dragged into this fun venue here. Is that I have a mega LinkedIn profile. I get 100,000 views a month lately. Of course, that's until LinkedIn decides that I'm banned or I did something wrong. But in the meantime, I do a lot of polls. You guys have probably noticed that the polls.
You're the one who cued us in on these poll things, David. So you're responsible. You're responsible for Mark putting this poll on and getting 159,000 views in a matter of hours. And
See, I'm a troublemaker, Nick.
You're a troublemaker. And all I did was put in this thing, the worst presidents poll. I went on to vote on. I'm going like, there's over 3,000 people who've already commented and voted. And I'm going, what are the views? I had no idea. So I emailed Mark, and earlier this morning he only had 87,000. Now he's up to 159,000. I thought, wow,
so
this is a hot ticket. Worst presidents.
LinkedIn is really pushing them. And, I think presidential perspectives change over time, right? Remember how much everyone hated George W. Bush, and now he's one of the most popular presidents in recent memory because it's gotten that much worse since. So, it's one of those things that great polling topic, but also remember, Nick, I tell you this all the time. Polls work right now on LinkedIn. Watch in January, they'll unplug it.
Oh, sure. So, yeah, no, I'm totally with you on this thing moves all the time, David. I got it. Okay, but what I'm looking at, because I follow numbers, and that's running an actuarial firm, all you do is look at numbers all day long. And the thing is, the numbers indicate that there's a demand for programming on the worst presidents poll. I also know that we can easily put together a program on the worst presidents ever. Okay, just like we have the greatest presidents ever.
Yeah,
could
and
run both shows.
I've been getting more
Yeah.
signups for my page, which is a hard thing to crack on LinkedIn, through
Yeah.
the polls. So
Oh,
you know
really?
how that, like, individuals,
Sure.
it's easier to grow a following as an individual. I've been
Right.
getting more signups for Bold TV through the polls.
Oh, really? So it's actually helped you out a lot.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
so
Nick-
I mean, to me, it's all number driven. Yeah, David.
Nick, I want to go back and ask you something we were talking about earlier.
Mhm.
Mark?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm here.
I have no doubt that gamers are particularly adept and smart and see things that bureaucrats and bureaucratic business organizations don't see. Here's what I don't get. Why do people have any faith in cryptocurrencies? We have all sorts of people who say, oh, the US dollar, fiat currency, you can't trust it. Why would anybody trust the cryptocurrencies, especially now that there are, 30 or 50 brands out there?
Oh,
Well-
you want. I mean, the thing is,
10,000
you-
actually.
I know
Well-
Mark's answer, but before he answers, I actually want to add to that.
Yeah.
Why do they not only have a faith in the cryptocurrency, but why do they have faith in the metaverse? And I'm actually helping somebody plan a metaverse New Year's Eve party, so I shouldn't probably be putting like killing the goose to kill, the whole thing with the goose egg and everything. I probably shouldn't even be asking the question, but it is very popular, the metaverse and all of that. But I'm just curious because that is basically saying that we're going to stay in this virtual world. Well, I'll never get to meet David unless we happen to go to a live NABJ NAH event sometime in the next 2 or 3 years and everything, because we'll all be in the virtual world, because that's what metaverses are about.
I hate to say it. Just because Mark Zuckerberg says this is the next big thing, doesn't mean it's the next big thing. I hate to disillusion you guys. I got a whole big book on Mark right here. Here you go, my friend. A big
I
book.
see it.
There you go, Facebook, right? Do you know how many mistakes this guy has made in his career? I mean, it fills a lot of these pages. Okay, so just because this guy says something doesn't mean it's going to be true. So this whole metaverse thing, like a grain of salt.
But it's not just him. Bill Gates has said it. Elon
good,
Musk
good.
has said it.
I want to hear Mark. I really want to hear Mark. Why?
So, yeah, so that's a great question, David, and I'll answer it in this way. First of all, I'm an older, more traditional guy, so I personally am still getting comfortable with the thought of cryptocurrencies and trying to understand them and so on, because it's a very complex area when you get right down to it. I think there's a couple of reasons. One is that many gamers are younger people. They've never been burned, and they're very willing to accept technological solutions to things.
Okay.
They like technology. They like simplicity. And so when many of the people that are building, whether it be websites or betting sites or gaming sites, they're building crypto exchanges into those. They know how to make them easy to use, easy to work, easy to sign up. There are also a lot of people in the gaming world that want to remain anonymous. They don't necessarily want you to even know their real name. One of my older son games. He's really one of the top gamers in the country. And I asked him, he was telling me about a friend who was having a conversation with him. And I said, well, what's his name? And he goes, I don't actually know his name. I only know his game name. So, I think there's a certain anonymity and a level of trust that goes beyond what you and I and many of us have been around so many years and seen it break or be violated. We're less comfortable with, hey, this is the perfect solution. We're much more reserved. So I think that's a big part of it. It's a combination of things, but they're much more trusting than you or I would be, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah,
The flip side of that is that, Mark, a friend of my brother's, and he's actually moved here because they were in that gaming space as well, probably about 5 or 10 years ago. And their friendship actually helped this particular friend move to North Carolina. Because like I said, they became friends through the whole game that they were playing. And I think it was one of those battle type games and everything of that nature. But that friendship got him to, when he was job hunting, learn about the market that exists here in the RTP, which eventually got him to move down here, even though I want to say that you're right. the other Mark. I don't think Malik, which is my brother, ever knew that guy's name until they became friends much further into the game life, and it became like a source of conversation. But at first, he was just a logo and a name on the screen, and then they got to talking to each other and learning each other. But for a long time, he had no idea who this gentleman was. But now they go visit each other because he's moved them to North Carolina.
You know, it's interesting that a lot of gaming, some gaming, of course, is just an individual person and not a team sport, so to speak.
Right.
But there are many games that require a whole team of people who have different jobs and responsibilities and so on. And they look at these gaming sessions and they plan them out and have their every, certain nights of the week for this period and so on. And you have a range of people that are literally all walks of life, some young, some older, women, men, and so on. And they really look at the gaming both as an opportunity to play and express their skills, but also as a huge dialogue, a real conversational piece. The other thing that's real, I just bring this one thing up because I think it's interesting, and there'll probably be some good comments on this, is when these gamers get together, they can drive a stock price. They can drive all kinds of things. They literally can create a swarm, so to speak, and move the market on individual stocks and so on, which is really pretty interesting.
They've done that on AMC, GameStop.
Yep.
They Robinhood. They've driven all those stock prices wild. So I agree with you. It's a force to be reckoned with, and they do want to remain anonymous. I know that when I play chess on the internet at chess.com and these places and use handles, so people don't know who you are. I don't get it, but they let you do it. And there are some people who want to be anonymous, but David Grasso, since you're a younger guy, what are your thinkings about this cryptocurrency and handles and anonymity and all the stuff younger people tend to do?
Well, I can speak a lot on cryptocurrency. I'm actually one of the widest quoted people on crypto by Yahoo Finance. If you look me up, you'll see a lot of comments. And it's because of a few things. Number one, I'm not anti-cryptocurrency. I'm not pro-cryptocurrency. I don't own any cryptocurrency. So I'm basically the only one, right? Because it's this whole thing of, you have the old people like Charlie Munger saying, Warren Buffett's sidekick saying this is worse than rat poison. And then you have young people saying that this is the cure to all of our worst societal ills. I don't think neither of those are true. I studied regulation at the Harvard Kennedy School. It's something that I take seriously. And I think what cryptocurrency has turned into is enormous systemic risk. There are more than 10,000 coins out there. Most of them are coins that are complete scams, thinly disguised scams. And even the, gold standards, which are like Bitcoin, Ether, Litecoin, Solana, these, right? Exactly. Are creating,
I got my Bitcoin here.
We have $2 trillion of value out there, and it's basically unregulated. So I had lunch with one of my Bitcoin millionaire friends out here in Southern California. And I was explaining to him, like, listen, I believe in your right to do whatever you want with your money. My concern is, and the Bank of Singapore has spoken about this, is that when you have JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, hedge funds, everything, you're creating a bunch of systemic risk that is completely unregulated. And we saw how this blew up in our face during the mortgage-backed securities. So I think that's where the buck stops with me. If, any of you gentlemen want to buy crypto, it's none of my business. I think philosophically, it's very appealing to be able to exchange value without any government involved. But in terms of, getting our storied institutions, which at this point are basically backed by the US taxpayer explicitly, without any regulation, when clearly cryptocurrency is a security. So that goes under the Securities and Exchange Commission, and they just seem to be asleep at the wheel. And I think that's a big, big, big mistake. The Bank of Singapore is doing it right. They said, listen, if the individual citizens want to buy it, go right ahead. But the banks that are backed by the government of Singapore, which is basically every bank around the world, these institutional banks should not be investing in crypto. It is too volatile, it is too new, and it is too unproven.
Wow.
David, you don't have any
They're
NFTs?
very, very well spoken, because the thing is, my opinion, it is a security when you buy it, when they
Of
sell it.
course.
Yeah, and the thing is, I go all the way back to this old famous case, SEC versus Howey, and they had a definition: investment in an enterprise with the expectation of profits solely derived by the efforts of others. It's a security, and they got this guy called Glenn Turner that predates almost everybody on the show. Well, maybe not. He did the Dare to Be Rich scheme years ago, and he got caught because it was deemed a security. And now you fast forward, what is it now, 50 some years later,
Yes,
and
Well,
they don't.
Let me
They ignore it.
suggest one other aspect to think about here. You know, in national security cases, we often don't prosecute because we don't want to disclose things under the discovery rules to a defendant that would endanger our assets. And given that we have good reason to believe that a lot of the cryptocurrency is being used for criminal operations, they're probably being used also for terrorist operations and the like because of the tracing issues. And it could well be that there are people at places like FinCEN and the SEC whose position is, you know, we want this stuff to run so we can watch who's doing this. If they think we can't watch, we can.
I just want to make one thing clear here and everything. So you mean that if an NFT is cryptocurrency, and I just want to make sure that an NFT the same as cryptocurrency or a form of cryptocurrency, then I have more cryptocurrency than David Grasso does, because as a return,
I have
for
zero.
and I have at least 2 or 3 because I have some NFTs that were given to me for being part of a audio puppet troupe and everything. So they were given to me as part of the prize, for lack of a better term, for being part of that everything. David, I was just curious, because one of the things that the people are asking about that in that event that I'm part of that'll be taking place on January 1st. I know we're doing something here on the network, but they're also doing something out of London and parts of the U.S. I want to say the entire from east to west coast, and definitely as far to our other side as London. They're doing what they are labeling as the first ever metaverse New Year's Eve party. I don't know if this is actually true or just bad marketing, because maybe there was a metaverse New Year's Eve party before and everything. But what is your thoughts of the metaverse? And is this something that we need to worry about? Or is it something like Nick said, that it's not really going to happen? It's not going to really be a big deal. We're not all going to be in our virtual bubbles and all of that. So David, as a younger person, what is your thoughts of metaverses? Because I know we've got everything from a black metaverse to an astro metaverse. I have no idea what an astro metaverse is. I just know that I saw it on Clubhouse. They called themselves the astro metaverse.
I think this is where it's very straightforward. And I think a lot of older people understand that sometimes the future is too far ahead. For investment purposes, we might be jumping the gun here on things called the metaverse and, cryptocurrency, et cetera. Of course, blockchain technology, non-fungible tokens, and the metaverse are the future. The question is whether that's the best use, highest and best use of our money at the moment, or are we just in a little like .com bubble part 2? And that's where I think the young people don't understand, as Gaming Mark said, they haven't been burned yet. Well, I'm slightly old enough to remember when they got burned in the 90s, when you got burned during the Great Recession. And I definitely think that blockchain is here to stay. NFTs are here to stay. The metaverse, what a great profit-making opportunity, selling fake things, the best business in the world. But does that mean that's going to be here soon? I don't think so. I think it's going to take a lot longer than everyone imagines. And a lot of the people who think that they're going to become bazillionaires overnight are clearly mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's my thoughts on the metaverse also as well. But there's a lot of technology that gets ahead. In other words, you can buy all this technology, but you're so far out in the future that really doesn't make any economic sense to purchase it now. Yeah. And so the thing is, the metaverse may be so far out there that it doesn't make any sense. I think this was really a deflection by Zuckerberg to get people away from the problems with Facebook. So what he does is he deflects. Yeah. And I also think Instagram being pulled in front of Congress is really Legacy's media attack on social media.
Yeah, where's TikTok on that one, Nick? That's what I was saying.
I was looking at Instagram the other day, and they kept showing these Democratic congressmen, we hate Instagram because it's the most horrible thing that's ever happened to America, and they kept doing it over and over again. Then I get on Instagram, I go, it's a stupid website. What are you talking about? Well, people are having mental breakdowns watching Instagram.
Well,
They'll have mental breakdowns walking down the bloody street. What are you
Nick, to be
supposed to
fair
do?
to the critics of this, the argument is that the algorithms used by Instagram, if you express, say, something you're uncomfortable about your body weight, common for young women and somewhat for young men, they start feeding you the worst possible stuff about this and telling you you're horrible. I mean, that's the complaint, is that they've designed the algorithm in a way that can be harmful. I don't think it's the existence of Instagram per se.
Okay, yeah, but the thing is, see, David, there's a solution. I always like to find solution. There's this thing called the delete button. You just press delete. Okay, and so here's the way I see it on legacy media. Because if you go to the NAPT meeting, and someday we will go, okay, but right now probably premature. I'm going this year, but anyway, the big discussions they have is social media overtaking legacy media. In other words, social media is moving at a very fast clip, and legacy media is actually losing about 25% of the market share in the next 5 years, and there's nothing they can do about it. One way to stop or slow down social media is to attack it. I mean, this is not rocket science. So what they do is they create programs on traditional media, how bad Instagram is, TikTok, or whatever social media is out there, with no response on the other side, which is typical in your journalism industry.
Nick,
there's an attack and there's no response.
Nick, but
it's
that's
not
typical.
like a court where
well, hold on.
you
No,
get
the
to
rules.
say
Hold on a
something.
second. I was going to bring to David's
You
point.
have to go to the other side, every other side in journalism.
Well, you're supposed to, but they don't do it anymore, David. What?
But that's their choice. They were solicited in every case for their argument, and I can show you in the news stories I've read that that's exactly what happened. You are unlike historians who can just tell the victor's side in the journalism. You are absolutely required to go find, no matter how hard it is, the other side. But a lot of companies have taken the position of, we don't care what you say, and so they end up with, Instagram said it had no comment, or Instagram didn't respond to repeated requests for an interview.
There you go. Right.
Hey, David, it comes back to something I said before you and David Grasso came on earlier and everything, and Bill Danko and Mark, the other Mark, heard me mention this. Aren't we doing the same thing now in the sense of a new media versus an old media that happened in the Ben Franklin day, when we had people that were doing newsletters that were targeted for one side or another, and therefore we only heard one side? Because a lot of the newsletters were created because they didn't like the viewpoint of what was considered mainstream media at that time. I mean, that's part of the reason that Ben Franklin created his papers, part of the reason that Frederick Douglass created his, part of the reason that some of the women suffragists created theirs and everything as well. So it's nothing new to be like, I see the media, I don't like the media, so I'm going to create an alternative media and things of that nature.
Yeah, a lot of creativity there, and I absolutely agree with you. We keep seeing new forms, new ways of doing things, people with new perspectives, and it is not at all new per se. It goes back to 400 years ago when we first got the news, which was to tell merchants, manufacturers, shippers about faraway conditions. And you finance it by ads to bring the buyers and sellers into the tent. And journalists basically are the barkers saying, hey, come in here and look at this. And there are studies that show that many people buy the Sunday newspaper and only want the ads. They may want the coupons, but they may want the ads. There are lots
and the cartoons.
People weren't reading ads. Why would they be in the newspaper? That's why it's about 45% of the print space is ads.
No, I totally agree with you on that. Hey, David, I'm a little upset at something that Nick just said, because I like Instagram as well. I mean, sometimes it's the pictures that are alluring, and we'll just leave it at that. But I also like the cats, and the cats are very funny, and the cats are very humorous, and all of that. So like I said, you see the cat that can do better long jumps than some of our champion track long jumpers and everything, and those are funny, and I enjoyed them. I was wondering your thoughts about those humorous cat, and I'm not going to leave the dog people out as well, because there's some humorous dog ones as well, but there's some things that just in there going like, wait a minute, the Bolt can't do that.
What you're saying feeds into what David's saying. These algorithms make it so you love it, Mark. But what Nick is saying is also true, and I don't think these are both reconcilable, right? Yes, the mainstream media is unfairly targeting Facebook. Facebook has made a lot of mistakes, but Facebook is no worse than TikTok. In fact, TikTok is much worse than Instagram. I was mystified by Marsha Blackburn and what's his face, the senator from Connecticut, coming out and doing their little show for the mainstream media. Honestly, I've cracked TikTok recently, and I think TikTok is much worse than Instagram, as I said. But yes, the problem with Facebook, and I've seen it done because I've been a user since 2004, the algorithms have gotten progressively worse and worse, and they're geared toward negative sentiment. And it changes people's moods, it changes societal discourse, and it's enormously damaging, and it's something they need to look at.
And legacy media is the one to complain about it. Oh, and this night we're going to see 5 murders and 3 rapes.
Yeah, no, of course.
You know, why are they complaining about the mental health when they're the problem? In other words, so if they're not the moral authority for the world. Sorry. So when
Nick, there's some very well done studies, and there's a very good brief book by a journalist about the TV news, the local TV news, which is where most people get their news. And if it bleeds, it leads. If it's on fire and there's nothing bleeding, that leads. So that people in America widely believe crime is dramatically up and getting worse. In fact, compared to 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, despite the spike during the pandemic, it's way, way, way down. And what the research shows is that those places that don't do the news that way, they start off with, here's what the Boston City Council did, or the Minneapolis Hennepin County Board of Commissioners, or whatever they call the board there. They get bigger audiences, and for the point of view of advertisers, better quality. So one of the mysteries is, why do we have so much schlock TV when quality draws a better audience? And we do all over the country. We have, where I live, just awful TV news instead of substance. But in the 2 markets most known for this are Minneapolis and Boston, where they do substance, not if it bleeds, it leads.
Oh, really? Well, all I know is presidential polls are bleeding right now, so it's going to be bleeding what we're going to be discussing.
I think I'm going to cross 1,000 before 2:00, because right now I'm at 955 comments. So I think I'm going to cross 1,000.
How many views are you at right now?
Hold on a second, I'll tell you that. But I saw that the comments.
I might copy you on this one. Let's see if it works again.
Hey, well, maybe you should, David. You should do one on the best presidents, because the thing
is, that's a good idea. Yeah,
you know, we do have
plans. We're at 172,000,
and we're going to do a show.
You're 172,004 views and everything. So 172,004 views.
So you've gotten 13,000 views during this hour.
Yeah, right.
Pretty much.
That's what I'm saying, David. I mean, the thing is, if I could do book sales like that, ding, 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 you know, that would be great.
Yeah, Bill and I need to take lessons on how to do that.
Yeah. Well, the thing is,
I do, not Bill. He's outsells me.
Yeah. Bill already sold his 4 million. I don't know how he did it, but he got his 4 million plus sales. But the thing is, what I'm looking at is, okay, rather than try to create a program and put it in everybody's face, go find out what everybody wants and then put the program together, because it's really easy to create the worst president's program. You see what I mean? And then you're going to get a lot of views.
I know we're winding down. I know we're winding down, but just really quickly,
yeah.
David K., you actually brought up an interesting point, because one of the other ones that did not get the kind of results, but I mentioned it to Nick earlier and everything, was a poll where I asked people about their local news coverage. And there was a lady that told me actually about the state below me, South Carolina, and they were complaining about pollution because of a plant factory down in her part of South Carolina. But that was like a news story that even I, in North Carolina, one state up, had not heard about, because I was asking them, and a lot of it was like, what do you consider the important issues that you would like covered? So there was a lot of the things that you would expect, like gentrification, homelessness, inflation, things of that nature. But she brought up a specific example of a news story that was not covered. And that's one of my frustrations. I'm just going to mention RTP, where I live at and everything. I argue that there has got to be thousands, if not tens of thousands, of scientists here in this area doing all kinds of amazing work. If it's in Cree, if it's in Red Hat, if it's in that gaming field and all of that, I can tell you that if I was to turn on the TV for a month, I would probably see zero stories on what they are doing in the RTP.
care.
And the same could be said for Silicon Valley, where you are at in California. There are probably zero stories that are covering about these amazing
Because
things.
the worst president's going to override it, Mark. I'm sorry. You got to follow the numbers. And the numbers say they want to hear a story about the worst presidents. So feed them the worst presidents. Who gives a rat's rear that you're polluting all the people in South Carolina? They're all dying. No one gives a rat's rear about it. I'm sorry. Let them all die. They want to know who the worst president is. With that, we do want to thank everybody for coming to Media Monday around the world, and thank our new viewers on Al Jazeera. And maybe later on we'll learn more about your programming. But we'll see you next week on Media Monday.